Welcome to the HR Happy Hour Show with Steve and Trish, sponsored by our friends at Paychex. Today, we are going to be talking about some really current issues and trends facing HR leaders, about return to work, diversity, inclusion, mental health, and more. We've got a great guest waiting in the wings. But Trish, before we welcome her, I have a question for you. Soup or salad?
Soup or salad? I will say typically salad. Although last night I had that choice and I chose soup. So I don't know. What about you? A salad for me is like more refreshing, I think. Feels healthier. I don't know.
Salad every time. That's it. Over.
A salad every time. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want olives involved in the salad. So as long as there's no olives, then salad it is.
All right. We'll ask our guests. I knew the question would be a simple one, not non-controversial. I'm staying away from controversy, Trish, with the question of the day today. We are super excited to welcome our special guest, Jenny Dearborn. She's the Chief People Officer at Klaviyo. Previously, she was Chief Talent Officer and EVP of Human Resources at SAP, who we know very well, Trish, where she was responsible for the training strategy and education programs for 95,000 employees worldwide. She came to SAP through its acquisition of SuccessFactors, another company we know well, where she was VP of Sales. She's a mother of four, obsessed with military history. That's pretty cool. We might have some Civil War questions coming up, Jenny. And she wrote a book called Data Driven about using data analytics to improve performance. And one of her favorite quotes is from Madeleine Albright. There's a special place in hell for women who don't help each other.
You know what? I like the part about helping women because as he's reading this, I'm thinking like, I really want to use your bio as my new bio.
Yeah, well, awesome. Welcome to the show, Jenny. How are you? Do you want to weigh in on Super Salad before we ask you about what you're doing?
Salad every time, unless it is roasted red pepper tomato.
Yeah,
that's fair.
That sounds good too.
That 100% of the time when I see that on the menu, I switch over to soup.
Yeah. Nice. Jenny, it's awesome for us to have an HR leader on the show, such as yourself. It's great to see you, great to talk to you. First off, before we get into some of the topics we want to talk about, some of the challenges facing HR leaders today, and maybe even your own organization, maybe you could give us like 60, 90 seconds on Klaviyo. Tell us what Klaviyo is, what's it all about, maybe some of the footprint of Klaviyo.
Yeah, for sure. So Klaviyo is a database company. Our first application on that database is email marketing. We were founded in 2012. We have just under 1,000 employees. We've had our Series D, and we are on the road to IPO and doubling year over year. We are based in Boston, Mass, but have a global footprint.
Nice. That's pretty cool. Yeah, Boston's a great town. It's a good, interesting kind of market to be in, right? Because organizations of all kinds are trying to find ways to meet their customers, engage with their customers, right? And I guess that's what you guys do, right? Help organizations kind of connect with their own customers.
Absolutely. So we are a one-to-many communication platform at scale. And so we allow entrepreneurs to connect with their customers in a highly personalized way.
So Jenny, let's talk about some of what's been happening, as an HR leader. God, I can't think of the last year and a half or so, right? Has it ever been more difficult, challenging for HR leaders like yourself? Maybe tell us a little bit how how things have been going at Klaviyo and some of the big challenges you guys have seen and how you're managing to kind of navigate through everything that's been going on and continues to go on.
Yeah, I think the short answer is it's never been harder. Probably the most significant issues for us as HR leaders is growth and scale in times like this, managing workplace mental health, managing a distributed workforce, especially those companies that had a strong face-to-face or in-office presence. Going to a distributed or remote or hybrid model has been very challenging for lots of my peers at other companies. But I'd say probably the most consistent across all companies has been workplace mental health.
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad you mentioned that, Jenny, because we've been doing a series of shows over about the last almost 2 years on just different ways to think about mental health in the workplace, to have people feel more comfortable to disclose if they're having issues. I'd just love to hear your perspective. I mean, you've obviously worked in the HR tech arena as well as your current role. Could you maybe just talk a little bit about over the years that you've been involved, working with both large organizations and smaller ones, are you seeing a shift in people's willingness to maybe disclose that they need a little help and assistance, or is that still kind of a stigmatized conversation? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I'm absolutely seeing a shift towards employees feeling comfortable talking about that, raising their hand, and employers needing to adjust and accommodate. So I would absolutely encourage everyone to speak up, raise your hand, say that you need help, push the organization that you work for to say, we need more time off, we need more PTO, we need more services, we need more HR business partner support for, sort of being a sounding board and being somebody that you can go to and talk to. Employees should be pushing their employers for more support and more services. And employers need to know that that's what the best talent out there is looking for. The best talent expects a high touch, high service environment when it comes to being sensitive to workplace mental health issues. And, it's a candidates market out there right now. It is hard to find top talent. We are absolutely in a war for talent, and every candidate should know that they need to be asking about this in their interview process, right? I mean, I talk to candidates all day long for all of the openings that we have, and really savvy candidates will say to me in the first interview, tell me about your workplace mental health initiatives. Tell me about your DEI initiatives. People don't ask me about comp, right? Because they assume that that's going to be good. And they're looking for, what are those differentiators, right? What really sets apart one company from another company? If everybody has a level playing field with the same comp, what really sets your company apart? And it's, tell me about your commitment to corporate social responsibility. Tell me about your commitment to diversity, and how are you holding yourself accountable to achieve your diversity goals? And tell me about your workplace mental health. Those are the three things I hear the most of from candidates asking us questions as an employer. Like, think about 15, 20 years ago, a candidate wouldn't ask those questions, right?
Oh, no.
Absolutely.
No, they would not.
Candidates do now, which I think is awesome. So candidates are so empowered to speak their truth and say what they need and demand more from their employers. And they know that it's a candidate's market. And I think it's awesome.
Are you doing anything to train your leaders who are also interviewing? Because you're right. I mean, I was in HR for almost 20 years, and I can't recall anyone ever asking that, right? But I've been out for about 7 years. So for perspective, are you training and specifically telling people to have that conversation about what you offer? Is that a thing, or do you?
Yeah. I mean, we are now. I mean, we track internally. What are the most frequent candidate questions? So we keep a running list that is always being sort of reprioritized of the top 10 most frequent candidate questions that are given to interviewers, whether it's a hiring manager or anybody on the interview team, or coming into talent, the talent acquisition team, the recruiters. And so the recruiting team keeps track of this, and they keep track of those top 10. And we are always going back out to managers, or anybody who is an interviewer. They're required to be certified, right? You can't talk to a candidate until you've gone through interviewer certification, and you have to keep that fresh, right? And so part of that is knowing how to answer the top 10 most frequently asked questions. And it's DEI, workplace mental health, it's these things.
Jenny, have you adapted or added to your sort of outbound, maybe content on the website, the messaging you're doing out to the community about, Klaviyo's kind of EVP, if you will, like to emphasize some of those things? Have you had to make have you to put that more in the forefront?
I would love to say that I am. Our website, to be totally honest, is a complete mess right now. So it has a lot. I have all that stuff documented. And when candidates reach out to us. We send them a PDF of, here's our employer value proposition, all that stuff. So I have it all documented. It's not outwardly facing right now because our website needs to clean up. It's part of being a startup, right?
I lived through many years of when you go to the IT team, if you will, and there's website updates that need to be made. The HR/recruiting team was always at the bottom of that list for IT project prioritization, at least in my experience.
Yeah. It's we're victims of our own success. We're hiring so fast. So I have roles open right now for the marketing engineering, which are the people who keep the website up to date.
All right. Well, maybe one of those folks will hear the show and
I hope so.
Jump in.
That's right.
I have 100 roles open right now. Please apply.
Wow, that's pretty cool. We'll make sure we share the link to that page where those roles can be found and people can learn more about them at the end of the show. Jenny, you mentioned diversity a couple of times. I'd love for you to share some thoughts on kind of the crisis that all organizations have gone through and are really still continuing to navigate with ongoing issues here in the U.S., return to work plans, starting, stopping, starting again, et cetera, et cetera. I'd love your thoughts on maybe the opportunity for HR leaders to use this crisis, if you will, as an opportunity to improve. Specifically around diversity, equity, and inclusion, which has been important for a long time, but maybe is even more important now. I wonder if you have any thoughts on how to take advantage of the situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. I don't know who said the quote, and I might get it wrong, but it was something like, never let a good crisis go to waste, right? So use social, the issues that are going on in society as a forcing function for driving change. So we stay true to the change that we want to see, and we seize these opportunities that happen in society, in the world, to make big jumps forward. It's a perfect time to be in HR. It's a great time to be in HR, to be able to harness, the issues that are going on in the world to drive more equity and inclusion and belonging in our companies, right? So we've got social unrest in the world. Let's use this as an opportunity to demand that all companies publish externally their diversity and inclusion metrics, right? The breakdown of, at a minimum, let's start with race and gender, by function, by level, right? So imagine a matrix, and the columns across the top are sales, services, engineering, G&A, and the rows horizontally are entry level, first level manager, second level manager, director, VP, executive, whatever, however you want to structure it. And, every company should be, standing up, every publicly traded company, and it would be great if everybody followed suit, but should be saying to the world, congratulations to us, 20% of our employees are diverse, but gosh, isn't it a shame that 100% of those diverse candidates are in the bottom tier of your company? Come on, guys. Seriously, you need to be a lot more transparent about what you were congratulating yourself on before. Or, congratulations to us, 40% of our employees are women. But if 100% of those women work in human resources and there's zero in sales or in these other functions, come on, you can be better than that.
How do you figure out how to kind of the return to work, right? Is some companies, maybe it's really kind of a broader discussion of, you talked about it earlier, Jenny, about the culture of the organization was it really an in-person kind of collaborative, we're all going to sit around the same table or sit on a long table of people, right? And write code together all day long, but versus because we see the hybrid, the remote work certainly, but maybe the ongoing hybrid strategies as an opportunity for companies to expand the net, right? And say, well, we don't necessarily have to hire candidates who live 30 minutes from this office. It can open up more. And in theory, that can open up more opportunities to improve DE&I, right?
For sure. Opportunities to improve DE&I, but also just get greater diversity. We have seen time and time again, and the data shows up that the flexible work schedule is an absolutely critical need for women,
Yeah.
women of school age kids.
Yeah.
And that if we were to be more generous and accommodating to a flexible schedule, you would have a significant population of very motivated employees that did not feel like they needed to drop out or take a completely different job and then come back in later, after a 10-year gap when everybody else has gone way ahead because they didn't have those same at-home demands. And if companies can say, my recruiting bubble is not just people who are willing to drive into Boston, but it's really, we're going to go find the best talent regardless of where they live. And if we can rely more on collaboration tools and technology and a more structured way of tracking and measuring goals and performance instead of I see you with my eyes, therefore I know your finger, I can see your fingers moving on the keyboard, therefore I know you're working. If we can move our mentality from that, then we know, we don't just need to see you to know that you're working. So I think the pandemic has also been a forcing function, never let a good crisis go to waste, to really, really challenge ourselves in terms of our flexible working schedules.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. The pandemic has sort of forced it on us, right? So we had no choice but to be flexible. It was interesting. I was just watching on Netflix the other day. There was like a special about Dolly Parton that recently came out. And one of the things, of course, it went over her role in the movie 9 to 5. And I haven't watched that in probably, I don't even know how many years, right? 30 years, 25 years, something like that. But it's interesting because you're sitting here and you're talking about all these examples of what we need to be doing, especially for women, in order to keep them engaged in the workplace. And we don't want to lose good workers. Like this problem goes back so far. Like that was a major part of that movie. I thought we probably need to go back and rewatch that. If you remember, it was like job sharing where they had like, oh, this woman comes in the morning and does this, right? And then in the afternoon, it's this woman. But what does that say about us as a culture that we haven't fixed that since the 80s when it was starting to be really, really talked about? It almost makes me a little sad. So I'd be interested in your thoughts on, like, do you really think, like, I feel sort of like the pandemic is going to be enough of a change factor to hopefully make this happen. Do you feel that way, or are you still skeptical?
I do. No, I'm very optimistic that this moment in time, especially, right now with Delta variant, like we're getting ready to go back. Oh, no. So we were like, it's going to be August, it's going to be September, and now we're saying January. So, it's working. We're working it from home, and it's okay. And we can now, we don't need to go back to how it was before. We do need to say that leaders are responsible for knowing what their folks are doing, setting clear goals and objectives, managing performance against those objectives. And one of your performance measures should be engagement, culture, connection, fun, friendships, all of that. And you used to just say, oh, no big deal. That stuff was going to happen automatically when everybody was in the office. And, we'll have a beer bash on Fridays, and it would just happen. Well, now you need to be more purposeful about it as a leader. You have to be deliberate. You have to plan. You have to think, what can I do remotely that's fun? What can I do remotely that creates connection and friendships? What can I do remotely that's going to drive people to have a higher level of engagement? It's harder. It's much harder. It makes the job of the leader so much harder. I mean, I had 2 exit interviews at my company in the last quarter that I conducted. And both of these folks said to me in the exit process, I'm going to, these were both high performers and very regrettable attrition. And they both said to me, I'm going to a company where I have friends and where I feel a connection. Now, I was hurt because I thought, well, I'm your friend, but hold on a minute. They onboarded remotely. Our entire professional relationship has been over Zoom. I've never met this person in person. They worked here for a year. They did great work, but something was missing. And it was an emotional thing, right? Their career was progressing great. They were paid great, all of this great stuff, working for a great company, all of this wonderful thing, but it wasn't the engagement and the emotional connection that they needed. And I was like, oh my God, that is going to be the hardest part of managing remotely and leading remotely, is that emotional engagement.
Yeah, Jenny, that's such an interesting story, because we've been obviously doing this show every week I've been doing the show every week for a decade plus, but obviously in the last 18 months, we've done so much, pandemic related content. And so we've had 7 conversations probably about remote hiring and remote onboarding, right? At least that's the first conversation now we've had on the show about, hey, what's happened with some of these folks, or at least a couple of examples you've given about folks who were hired completely remotely, probably, it sounds like, onboarded remotely, and their whole relationship with the organization and their colleagues and peers, and probably their manager, has been through screens like we're talking on now, and what may be some of the negative effects on that. It's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing this for 18 months now, so we've got enough time to start to see some trends. People come and go, all remote, and so we're starting to now be able to measure, well, what is consistent about people that have come and gone when it's all been remote, and why? And it's been the softer part, the traditionally softer part of the role. It's not about, did the company have a clear purpose? Yes. It was like, were they working on challenging work? Absolutely. Were they paid? Great. Yes. All the stuff. Did we have wonderful benefits? Yes, we did. Where did we fall short? It's creating a community. It's creating a sense of friendship, and it's challenging. I think it's not just my company. I think it's challenging for everybody.
Jenny, let me just take a quick pause. We must thank our show sponsor, of course, our friends at Paychex. This episode of the HR Happy Hour is brought to you by Paychex, one of the leading providers of HR, payroll, retirement, and insurance solutions for businesses of all sizes. Paychex has released the 2021 Pulse of HR report, which sheds light on what businesses need to do right now to meet the new expectations of a workforce no longer satisfied by the status quo, as we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes or so. The 5th annual report provides an in-depth look at how HR professionals are contributing to the success of the companies they serve during this transformative time. To learn how your peers are navigating the start of a new workplace era, download the report at payx.me/pulse21. And thank you always to our friends at Paychex. Jenny, you mentioned when you gave us kind of the overview of Klaviyo, we've talked about all these difficulties, all the workplace disruptions and the challenges, the mental health crisis, et cetera, et cetera. But many companies, and it sounds like yours is one of them, is growing still despite all this. Numbers are up, funding rounds, et cetera, growth in employees. And I guess my question is, like, how do we balance that? How do we balance kind of like, hey, we're doing great, with, oh my God, there's so much things going on in the world which are not so great. It's tough. Like we've talked to so many tech companies on this show, HR tech companies especially, who've done really well. They've told us 2020 was our best year ever, and it's weird to reconcile that, right, with all the challenges that have happened in society and organizations and for people, but yet some organizations are thriving. I don't know. Do you ever think about that? Like how are we still doing so well despite all this?
Yeah, I mean, for our individual company, we have a great product market fit for something that is needed right now and moving forward. And we are growing. So when I started 13 months ago, we had just over 300 employees, and we have just under 1,000 today. And we're doing our 2022 planning and looking to double again to end the year at about 2,000. Wow. It's a significant strain on the people function, right? To put all of the processes in place to be able to handle that growth. How are companies still growing and surviving? It's about being able to adjust to the needs of the market and being able to flex to where things are growing right now.
Yeah. So you're putting a lot of pressure, right? I don't mean you personally. I'm not calling you out, but there is a lot of pressure on the HR and talent teams and the recruiting teams and that type of environment, right? To support the growth, to find the talent. You mentioned it's a war for talent, and talent has the upper hand, et cetera, et cetera. Have you had to do anything, I don't know, just different or special to just make sure your own team is hanging in there and doing okay and getting through, because they have all the same problems at home that we all have with caregiving and disease and schools maybe not being open and all those things, right?
Absolutely. And so when I came 13 months ago, I think there were 14 folks in the people operations function, and I have about 85 now. So in that time, I've built out my HRIS team, and I don't even more than tripled my recruiting organization. I think my recruiting organization is like 40 people now, and built out a benefits program and a comp program and a learning and development program and talent management and all of this stuff and a whole HRBP organization. So thankfully, we've got a great board of directors that understands that in hypergrowth, which is anything that's more than 100%, during phases of hypergrowth, your G&A function needs to be out ahead as a percentage of the total company, out ahead of the total organization, to be able to lay the tracks and that groundwork to be able to absorb the growth in the organization. So my people function is probably 8% right now of the total employee population. Where if you were a large, super stable organization that had a minimal turnover and all of the processes and programs were already built and you were just maintaining and sort of monitoring the dials, you might have an HR organization of 2% or 1%, right? For a big.
Yeah. 1 per 100, right? That's the number they always used to keep it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And that assumes, minimal growth and a lot of stability in your business model and things like that. But given that we are, Klaviyo right now is, we're talking about new geographies, new products, upmarket, downmarket, verticals, all of this really, really, really exciting stuff. And in order to do that, you need to have a pretty significant HR organization that can, accommodate what the business needs moving forward.
Jenny, awesome. This has been a really fascinating conversation. It's great to hear from like a chief people officer kind of leading through everything that's gone on in the last 18 months or so, especially as a new one in your organization. You're new to your organization specifically, and just sharing really some interesting insights and stories about how you guys are doing and what you're doing and what organizations should be doing. I have one last question though, before, if you'll indulge me, before we let you go. Jenny, do you miss HR Tech? Do you miss it? You were there for a long time. Or are you done with it? Were you done with this? I'm never going back to HR Tech.
No, I do miss it. I love HR technology. It is so important to be that technology foundation for any organization. There's only so much work that humans can do before humans go crazy, right? I mean, as humans need to understand, I think this is the challenge for HR leaders moving forward, is understanding, for all of the work that needs to get done, what can and should be done by humans and what can and should be done by technology. And that really is the one of the key problems or challenges that HR leaders need to address moving forward. You can't just throw people at the problem over and over and over, especially as you scale. You need to really look at the outcomes you're trying to achieve and say, where do we need critical thinking, creativity, innovation, problem solving, empathy, cross-cultural awareness? That is work for humans. Mm-hmm. And what is a problem that is going to be reoccurring? I keep telling people, if you've seen a problem more than twice, automate it, right? If the same problem comes up over and over, figure out a way to automate that away, to create space in your life, in your day, in your calendar, to do the work that only humans can do, to do the work that requires a high touch, very empathetic human to interact with an employee to do that stuff, and automate away anything that happens over and over and over. You should never have humans doing that stuff. So you have to have HR tech as a foundation for any great people strategy.
All right. Love it. Thank you, Jenny. I had to throw it out there just because of my connection to HR tech, Trisha's as well. And since we talk about that so much on the show, well, this has been super fun. Thanks again, Jenny, for taking some time and spending some time with us today.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks.
Awesome. Trish, great stuff. We will make sure we get the link out to the Klaviyo opportunities to help Jenny out. She's got to hire hundreds and hundreds of people, it sounds like, maybe thousands.
Sounds like it.
We'll have to try to help her out with that. So awesome. Trish, good stuff.
No, great show. Thank you, Jenny, for coming on. I feel like I learned so much just in this conversation, and I look forward to just following you in the future. So hopefully all of our listeners will as well.
All right, great stuff. Thanks to our friends at Paychex, of course. Check them out at paychex.com. Check out all the show archives at hrhappyhour.net. For our guest, Jenny Dearborn, for Trish McFarland, my name's Steve Boese. We will see you next time on the HR Happy Hour Show.